for existing buildings still became the norm. But the industry pretty much collapsed on itself, and nobody started doing any more fire escapes, other than local ironworker guys and welding guys maintaining these things, or painting guys. Now, whenever you go out to write a violation, the tendency is scrape and paint violation. You look at this, and you see some rust, you say, hey, scrape and paint. Well, the guy who's getting this violation is going to take that literally. He's going to say, oh, scrape and paint. He's not going to go looking for anything more than that. He's going to be called Joe Painter. Joe Painter shows up, and he's going to paint over everything that's going on here. And then you come by, you look at it, looks nice and black, you think somebody did something, and you sign off to get off the violation off the guy. What you have to write, this is what we teach throughout the country, it's called a repair and paint violation. The repair and paint violation is one that now you involve somebody, an ironwork company, and a fire escape inspector, which is very few out there, so I tend to be one of them, but there's not many like us out there, because I'm actually building this industry. There's only 2 states that have fire escape inspectors, Mass and LA, and I have both licenses. But you get, even in Mass, you may not want to take my license, that is a Boston license. I still, because the law says very specifically, structural engineers and or others acceptable to building officials. I do my best to try to get you to accept it, because I teach classes for that reason. I say, hey, I'm teaching a class, can you be one of the approved guys on your list? But sometimes say, you know what, this guy still wants, like Lexington, he was at one of my classes, but his building official was not. I mean, the commissioner was not. So he says, you know what, I'm more comfortable with an engineer. And we have them both on staff, but the only problem is it drives the cost up to the owner for the engineer to be involved. On average, a fire escape of this size, 1 to 5 family, we get, because we do volume, $199 to $499. Most engineers start at $750 to $1,500 for the same exact job. Okay? So that's what might be prohibitive. But if you can get somebody to come in, especially the licensed guys, just like home inspectors or anybody that can prove to them that they are licensed, they know their job. I would highly recommend that you start a list of approved vendors who inspect and approved vendors that repair. So if welding guys and paint companies want to get on that list, the rule is very simple. We're going to now look at this, and I'm going to tell you where the rust came from. Once I tell you where the rust comes from, you'll never write a scrape and paint violation ever on a fire escape. You'll write a repair and paint violation. And you'll never let it get painted until you check it under the repair status. If you want it repaired, removal of rust, spot time all the work that's been done, check it, letter from an engineer at that moment, and then I don't care who paints it. They can paint it in, we can have pigeons paint it. It doesn't matter anything. Because what you want is structural. So in the past 50 to 75 years, painters have been at this, and the welding companies and the iron workers and the engineers have never been in there. So these painters have been ahead of us. Now we're saying, hey dude, you've been there long enough, get in the back, let the engineers at it first, let the iron workers or the welding companies at it, and they're both qualified, and then let the painters come in last. There are some companies that are all. We're one of those, that we're all. Everybody else is usually 3. The iron guys don't want to paint it, and stuff. So, every one of these fire escapes anywhere in the world, 98% of them are bolted connected. Threads are bolted, connections are bolted, supports are bolted, gussets are bolted, and it's tied into your building. That's it. So, if 98% of fire escapes are like this, what you don't want is welding guys coming in here to weld, because they tend not to remove the rest, they tend to weld the rest of the position. That's one of the biggest problems. Welding guys are qualified. They just need to be told how to properly do it. They don't want to do that part. They want to drag 100 feet of cables without burning permit from the local fire department, and they want to start welding these fire escapes on 100-year-old buildings. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen. But if you take out a tread that has 4 bolts, and you fix that tread, and you're going to put it back, why would you want to drag 100 feet of cable to weld that tread back in position when 4 bolts from Home Depot in your pocket is all you need? So that's how we do. But otherwise, if they remove 100% of rust, they've taken all the precautions for welding, and they have a fireman sitting here on a 4-hour detail with a hose in his hand, yeah, they can weld it. Nice. Because fire escapes, when they get hot and they get cold, they need to breathe and they need to move. And what happens is when they get frozen shut. And anybody that has any welding experience will tell you that. Weld, snap, and bolt stretch. Every one of the rust that I'm about to show you here did not start from out and go in and eat your connection. It started in your connection, and it worked its way out. So by the time you see a rusty fire escape, it's already had, on average, so it's a fully rusty fire escape, it's had 25 years to rust. How could any of its connections be good? If you have a fire escape that has some minor surface rust, well, that's not a problem. Surface rust doesn't kill anybody. But your connections do. We're going to be performing what's called a confidence test. Okay? This is what the load test. Everybody's confused about this load test rating. There's no state what this load test is. Let me give you some of the things people have done for a load test. Ready? One, rain barrels. They take rain barrels and they would put them in different parts, fill up with water. But the moving of this rain barrel, take the water out, move it somewhere else, fill it again, it's a nightmare. Number two, they put, one guy out of Seattle did this. He would go by and get the hobos, get 10 hobos from the local. Yeah, you wanna? It's 503. I think it's. He did the hobos. He put 10 hobos up on the thing. Took a picture. 10 staff to the building officials.
Master speaking.
That's the load test. So
Master speaking.
But here's the load test. Here's the load test for you.
Oh, he's actually on the other line. Pretty busy right now. Can he call you back in half hour?
This is what we're trying to change throughout the United
Very good.
So the confidence test works this way. I need to prove three things to you so that I don't have to load test this. Because a test on this farscape can either be $500 or $5,000 if you want me to load test. With plates, with come-alongs, and these units that what do you call the name for them?
I know it's gauges. I know.
Understand? Yeah. And now the same test would be either $500 or $5,000 to do a load test. But let me tell you what a confidence test is. Right in Massachusetts, the building code, it says, to the best of my knowledge, belief, my best information, knowledge, and belief, this farscape conforms to the building code of 1028.3, or the building code of when it was built. I need to prove three things to you. To the best of my knowledge, information, and belief, this farscape, when it was originally fabricated at somebody's shop 50, 75, or 100 years ago, it met the building code then. So I have to look at it to see if it's built like all the other farscapes I've seen with. Now here's where I come in. What's my knowledge? Well, my knowledge is I've been a farscape guy for 30 years. Or I'm an engineer and I went to college for 8 years. So that's my knowledge. Information is I get here. You're supposed to give me the original plans to this. If you don't have them, I have to use my knowledge and information. My information is what you show me. And I have to say, hey, based on my experience, I've seen tons of these. On Harvard, on this, on that, and the other thing. And this looks like it was fabricated to the norm. My second thing, so that's one. It looks like it was fabricated within the norms of farscapes that I've seen, and they're all built the same donut. It's very simple to look at the same donut. Now I'm going to look at it and say, was it installed within the norms of the building code now or then? Well, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing how you tie this. I'm going to go look for through bolts, or I'm going to go look for it basically buried in 8 to 12 inches into your building, and that there's no spalling. So there's the only two ways. Otherwise, you have legs to the ground, which you don't. So I'm looking for several, and there's only so many ways that this thing gets a test. If I see any lag bolts with this thing back in the building, it fails the load test. I don't have to load test it. It will fail. And if I test it, it's catastrophic. So that's why load testing is a bad idea, because the failure rate is catastrophic. So it passed number 2. So it looks like it was fabricated in somebody's shop to certain guidelines and norms. It looks like it was installed by a professional company on the day of installation, if I was installing it today or back then. It looks like it. And then number 3. Has it been maintained as required by law since the day of installation? And please answer the following questions below. And that's what I'm going to say. Here's the confidence test. Is there any rust in any of the connections of this fire escape? Is there any of the bolts that have either lost their heads or their nuts on there? Is there any cement that's spalling? So once I answer these 3, which is part of question number 3, it fails the load test. By failing the load test, I can say, do you wish me to now perform a load test and spend $5,000 of your money to tell you, because I can leave the rust where it is, but now I have to prove that it can last another 5 years. Everybody said, no engineer would ever sign off on that. They said, no, get that out. As soon as you put a bolt in, it doesn't need a load test because you brought it back to original condition. As soon as you brought anything back to original condition, that's the confidence that now no load is needed. No load test is needed. But if you wish to have one, hey, you've got all these guys that are willing to bring out their come-alongs and stop pulling 1,600 pounds left, right, and center. And that's the confidence test that we're doing today. So when you walk around your town and you look at any fire escape, the one thing that you're going to be seeing on this one is what you're going to be seeing on the other ones. And a lot of times you don't have the luxury of getting onto a fire escape because you either can't get on the building or you're far away or you might have some binoculars. But let's just do a walk around right now and see if there's anything we can see that would automatically trigger a need for an inspection. So all you're doing is testing to see if there's a trigger that needs an inspection. One, which is the easiest one, is it rusty? Well, that's the maintenance code. It says right 1028.1, 1028.2, 1028.3. One says an inspection, one says maintenance, the other one says obstruction. So If it's rusty, it already failed one of them, and if it fails one, you need to get all three done. You need to check for obstruction, you need to see if it's structural, and you need to see, it must be kept painted in order to pass 1028. So, but otherwise, let's take a look at some structural cues that you're like, okay, this farscape needs a structural refurbishment. Not painting. The painting is what they've been using for 75 years. So let's take a look at here, and we'll start. And if we just walk, if you're ever this close without physically getting on the fire escape, okay?